In March 2025, the ground beneath Myanmar shattered with a force no one could ignore. In July, an earthquake of such magnitude shook the remote stretches of Kamchatka and triggered tsunami alarms across the Pacific. In early 2025, fires raged across Los Angeles like never before. In Nigeria, a dam burst and flooded entire towns. Right here in Pakistan, flash floods tore through the northern valleys while monsoon storms blurred the line between seasons. These were not distant stories in science magazines. These were real catastrophes reshaping lives, landscapes, and how the world sees natural disaster risk. Today we're exploring the top 5 natural disasters that changed the world in 2025, and how they are rewriting our future. If you think you've seen wild storms or felt tremors before, wait until you hear this. A nation shattered on March 28, 2025. A monstrous earthquake measuring 7.7 to 7.9 struck central Myanmar near Sagaing and Mandalay, with its effects felt across neighboring Thailand and even parts of China and Vietnam. This was no ordinary quake. The rupture lasted some 80 seconds, and over 500 aftershocks followed. In Myanmar alone, more than 5,300 people were killed, over 11,000 injured, and hundreds went missing. The country's infrastructure was devastated, entire towns flattened, ancient pagodas and monasteries destroyed, roads and bridges collapsed. The economic cost, about $11 billion in damages, making it one of the costliest earthquakes in Asia in recent memory. What makes it especially haunting is that it struck during Friday prayer time. Mosques collapsed, and many worshippers perished. Humanitarian response was hindered by Myanmar's political instability and limited infrastructure. Still, aid convoys, international NGOs, and rescue teams worked to pull survivors from rubble and deliver relief to remote villages. But the scars, both psychological and structural, run deep. This quake made the world more conscious of how vulnerable lower-income nations are, and galvanized global conversations about resilient infrastructure in developing countries. The 8.8 magnitude shock, as if the world had not trembled enough, July 30, 2025 brought another seismic monster. Off the coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, a magnitude 8.8 megathrust earthquake erupted along the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, one of the strongest quakes recorded globally. This was the strongest quake since the 2011 Tohoku disaster and ranks among the top in recorded history. The shock lasted nearly 4 minutes 30 seconds and triggered tsunami warnings across Russia, Japan, and even the broader Pacific region. In Russia, at least one person died indirectly, and about 25 were injured. Damage ranged from cracked buildings and ceilings falling in Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky to damage in Sakhalin and beyond. Tsunami waves struck Kuril Islands and parts of Kamchatka's coasts, flooding low-lying areas. But this wasn't just about plates colliding. In the weeks afterward, 7 volcanoes on Kamchatka erupted, possibly triggered by the tectonic shock, while casualties were limited, partly thanks to evacuation systems and low coastal populations. The event reignited global focus on tsunami preparedness, early warning systems, and the potential for seismic events to cascade into volcanic eruptions. Flames in the winter sky in the first half of 2025. Los Angeles and its surrounding areas saw one of the most catastrophic wildfire events ever recorded in the U.S. These weren't typical summer fires. They blazed in winter, defying seasonal expectations, fueled by unprecedented dryness, high winds, and record heat. The insured losses alone were estimated at $40 billion, while total losses crossed $53 billion. Tragically, 29 people lost their lives in those flames. This event stands out not just for its cost, but for its bold warning. Wildfire season is expanding. The nature of risk is shifting. Urban expansion into wildland areas, poor vegetation management, prolonged droughts. All factors collided in this blaze. For the U.S., the LA fires intensified debates around building codes, defensible space, insurance in fire zones, and strategic planning for a future where fire could strike any time of year. Mokwa flood catastrophe in Nigeria. While much of the world's attention focuses on the U.S., Europe, and Asia, disaster struck hard in West Africa. In May 2025, the town of Mokwa in Nigeria was overwhelmed by catastrophic flooding. A combination of torrential rains, dam collapse, and drainage failures submerged entire neighborhoods. The numbers are staggering: at least 500 people killed, over 600 missing, and 200 injured. Over 4,000 homes destroyed, bridges washed away, roads demolished. Entire croplands and food systems were disrupted, threatening famine in the region. The displaced were forced to shelter in temporary camps, struggling with disease, hunger, and infrastructure breakdown. Globally, this disaster forced a reckoning. Abundant rainfall, shifting hydrology, and aging structural designs in tropical and developing nations are a recipe for repeated catastrophe. The Mokwa flood exposed how communities with limited resources are often first to fall. Pakistan's flash floods and deadly monsoon deluge. No list of 2025's most consequential disasters is complete without touching home. In June-July 2025, Northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan was battered by sudden flash floods triggered by relentless pre-monsoon rainfall. The Swat Valley saw rivers surge overnight, sweeping away people, vehicles, and homes. At least 32 lives were lost, scores were injured or missing, and hundreds of houses destroyed. But nature wasn't done. Over the monsoon season, severe storms raged across Pakistan and northern India. One report puts Pakistani fatalities at 750 persons in 2025 alone. In regions like Uttarakhand, India, floods and landslides accompanied the storms, drowning both wildlife and human lives in their wrath. Cities like Karachi witnessed urban flooding so intense that traffic came to a halt and power systems collapsed. What makes this disaster globally significant is its dual nature: part flash flood, part extreme monsoon event, reminding us that slow and sudden disasters can combine, overwhelm forecasts, and magnify destructive power. Why these 5 mattered, and what they teach us. These aren't just worst of the year stories. Together, they represent a turning point in how we see, prepare for, and react to natural disasters. Scale of damage: the economic toll in the first half of 2025 alone reached around $131 billion in global disasters, far above historical averages. Climate amplification: many events, like the LA fires and monsoon floods, were supercharged by climate change's fingerprints: hotter temperatures, erratic rainfall, drier soils, and stronger storms. Cascading effects: in Kamchatka, earthquake-triggered volcanoes; in Myanmar, quake waves destroyed temples and worsened post-quake disease risk. Vulnerability exposed: low-income and rapidly urbanizing regions, like parts of Pakistan and Nigeria, proved especially fragile under crisis. Rethinking readiness: these disasters pushed conversations worldwide on better building codes, early warning systems, disaster financing, green infrastructure, and local resilience. The human toll and stories beyond numbers: behind every statistic lies a story. In Myanmar, families walked for days across cracked roads to reach alternate paths, clutching the bodies of loved ones, while rescuers scrambled to pull survivors from ruins under heavy dust and heat. On Kamchatka, coastal villages emptied in minutes as sirens blared. Children watched waves crash into streets. People sheltered in caves and hillsides, later witnessing volcanic smoke on the horizon. In Los Angeles, elderly residents unable to evacuate were trapped in neighborhoods invaded by fire and smoke. Some fled only to have their homes consumed behind them. In Mokwa, entire neighborhoods vanished beneath floodwaters. Mothers clung to rooftops as children cried out for rescue. Crops and livestock went under, leaving households destitute. In Pakistan's Swat, tourists and locals near rivers were caught unawares. Families lost their children, their homes, their livelihoods, and even the paths to bury the dead. Each disaster reminds us, for every data point, a family is shattered, a community erased, a future altered. How we can respond: we can't undo 2025's disasters, but we can learn from them. Stronger early warning systems, especially in quake and tsunami-prone zones; resilient infrastructure, buildings that can bend, not break; ecosystem protection, wetlands, forests, and natural buffers reduce flood risk; climate adaptation planning, recognizing that our normal is shifting; global solidarity and finance, funds for vulnerable nations to build back safer. In a world growing hotter, wetter, drier, more volatile, disaster becomes part of our new reality. But we also have the tools to limit damage, save lives, and future-proof communities. If this journey through 2025's most dramatic natural disasters moved you, made you pause, reflect, or inspire you to learn more, I invite you to hit subscribe now. Turn on the bell so you never miss our deep dives into climate, disasters, resilience, and the future. Let me know in the comments, say which disaster struck you the most. What questions do you have about science, recovery, or how we prepare better? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, we'll explore the power, the danger, and the hope in our changing world.